name is Dr. Vanessa Harriman, and today I will be presenting a general guide to differentiating assessments. These can be adapted to fit multiple ages and grade levels, as well as multiple subject areas. As a result of this presentation, learners will be able to define differentiated assessment, identify and explain 5 major assessment categories, and to recognize common tools used when differentiating assessments. Assessment in general is a gathering of data. As teachers, we need to ascertain what our students know. Assessments, if done correctly, provide accurate, useful data. Assessment in general is ongoing feedback. Reliable feedback can be gathered before instruction in the form of pretest, throughout instruction through questioning, surveys, exit cards, and quizzes, and other things, and the traditional assessment time at the end of the instruction. Assessment in general is a necessary component of the learning process. Teachers need to find out what students have learned to determine what aspects of the learning may need to be reviewed. Assessment can serve as a motivation for students, whether grades are attached or not. Assessment should not happen only at the end of learning. Assessment that occurs only at the end of the learning reveals what a student knows. But without assessment before learning, there is no way to determine what has been learned because you have no baseline to compare to the end assessment. Assessments throughout the learning serve as checkpoints for both the teacher and students. Assessment that only occurs at the end of learning can be very frustrating because no one knows what progress has been made. If assessment occurs only before and after learning, students and teachers can be discouraged if little progress is made. However, assessment checkpoints throughout the learning can identify difficulties before the instruction has ended. Differentiating assessment is varying the assessment product or method to make the assessment as fair as possible for all students. Keep in mind that fair and equal are not synonyms. Not all students have the same abilities or needs. Assessing a rabbit and a monkey on their ability to climb a tree is equal, but it's not fair to the rabbit as he has no chance for success. This does not mean that a teacher must provide different assessments for different students, although the teacher may choose to offer limited assessment choices. If a teacher simply varies the type of assessment used, the assessment data will be more accurate. There are 5 major assessment categories. They are question-based assessment, problem-based assessment, performance-based assessment, affective domain-based assessment, and self- and/or peer-based assessment. Let's examine these categories more closely. Question-based assessment is straightforward. It involves asking questions. Students demonstrate knowledge by answering questions. Although common question types, such as true-false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, and others can be used, they are less reliable than questions that require students to compose answers. Let's look more closely at essential questions and interactive questions. Essential questions have more than one possible answer, although the answers should follow the same general pattern. Essential questions are based directly on the standards on which the lesson or unit is based. They should be worded in a way that engages the learner and challenges them. They may be used to connect learning across the content areas. Essential questions are based on real-world contexts and encourage creative and critical thinking. Here are a few examples of essential questions. Are animals essential for man's survival? Explain. Why would Europeans want to come to the colonies? Do stories need a beginning, middle, and end? Why? Another type of differentiated question-based assessment is the interactive question. When constructing interactive questions, the teacher chooses the concept to be tested and offers students choices in which type of question to answer, as in the depth of knowledge type, or which activity to complete, as in the product type. Interactive questions that are differentiated by depth of knowledge allow students to demonstrate how well they understand the new learning rather than if they had simply mastered the content or not. All 3 questions presented here assess the same concept but at different levels of understanding. Students are to answer the question that they believe best represents their abilities within this concept. It is important to vary the order of the questions so that the students do not automatically identify that the first question is the easiest and the last question is the hardest. Interactive questions differentiated by the product allow students to choose which activity will allow them to demonstrate their knowledge effectively. The teacher determines the number of options offered. These options are sometimes presented in chart form and called choice boards or tic-tac-toe boards. For this example, I've provided 3 activity choices that demonstrate understanding of the concept. Students are given the directions, choose a way to represent the main character in the story. There are 3 choices given. 1. Write an acrostic poem describing the main character. 2. Diagram the main character's relationship with others in this book. Or 3. Describe how the main character would react if had not happened. Of course, for option 3, the teacher would fill in the blank based on the story chosen. He or she may choose to omit the word not, depending on the story. Problem-based assessment takes a philosophical approach to student assessment. When this type of assessment is used, the results not only reveal the student's knowledge, but also how they learn. Real-world problems help students to create meaning of their knowledge. Here are a few examples of problem-based assessment activities. Students are given a portion of a story. They're asked to write an ending. Students brainstorm solutions for a common problem, such as walking home from school safely. Or students rewrite history by role-playing what would have happened if a particular historical figure had taken a different action. For example, what if the United States had not used the atomic bomb on Japan during World War II? For performance-based assessment, students are asked to demonstrate their understanding of the concepts of a unit of study and the associated skills through a culminating event or performance. A rubric is often used to evaluate the product. This example of a performance-based assessment asks students to create and perform an original parody based on the examples given in class and class discussion. These could be scenes from television programs and movies, commercial songs, or stories. Because of the extent of this project, students are allowed to work with up to 3 others. The performance is evaluated using a rubric. The affective domain refers to one's feelings and emotions related to a particular event or concept. Most often, these responses are gathered through journaling and learning logs, but could also take the form of exit cards and discussions, in partners, small groups, or even the large group. Here are a few examples for affective domain-based assessments. Ask how students feel about their learning. Are they feeling lost? Do they feel they're getting it? Is there some confusion that can be cleared up before test time? Reflect on a unit of study to review it for a test. Explain how learning has changed their ideas or misconceptions. Clarify issues, especially if they're confusing. Summarize ideas. Preview or predict what will be presented next. Record data from experiential activities. Self-based assessments and peer-based assessments require students to think critically and take responsibility for learning. To be effective, the teacher must ensure that there are specific criteria for the students to follow. It is also important that this type of assessment not be used for grade purposes or for assessment at the end of a unit. Here are a few questions that could be used for self-based assessment. Adjustments may be needed based on the age or ability level of the students. What was your goal for this assignment? How well did you accomplish your goal? What is the best part of your work on this assignment? What part or parts of your work might need improvement? What was your least favorite activity when working on this assignment? What did you learn about yourself while working on this? If you did the assignment over, how would it be different? How does this assignment connect with work in this or other classes? Based on the criteria, what score or grade do you think this work deserves? Why? Rubrics and checklists can also be used in self-based assessment. Just as students need to be taught how to judge their own work fairly, they must be taught how to critique their peers' work as well. Some students lack tact. Some students want to hurt others. Some students are afraid of hurting others. If a teacher chooses to use peer assessments, he or she is responsible for teaching the students how to do so without hurting others. Focusing on specific criteria is absolutely necessary. Rubrics and checklists can be helpful with this. Another technique is called the appreciation sandwich. The appreciation sandwich is a way to offer constructive criticism based on the criteria for the assignment. A critical comment is sandwiched between two positive comments. Human nature will allow us to remember the criticism, but also remember the positive input because it surrounds the criticism. As this is the end of the new information, let's briefly review what has been presented. Assessment is necessary for gathering data before, during, and after instruction. Differentiating assessment involves the teacher varying the assignment techniques used or providing specific options allowing students to have choice in their assignment. There are 5 major assessment categories: question-based assessment, problem-based assessment, performance-based assessment, affective domain-based assessment, and self and/or peer-based assessment. Each has been discussed and examples have been given. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this presentation as part of the interview process for a position as course mentor with Western Governors University.